Meet John. He's 50 years old, has £150,000 saved, and has spent the last few years quietly dreaming about retiring at 57, not 65, not 67, 57, while he's still young enough to actually enjoy it. There's just one problem. When he finally sat down and ran the numbers properly, what he found nearly stopped him in his tracks. Not because his dream was impossible, but because there was a gap in his plan that nobody had told him about. And it was slowly draining his retirement before it had even started. This is John's story, and if you're thinking about retiring early, it might be yours too. John had done what most people do. He looked at his pension pot, estimated what he wanted to spend, did a rough back of the envelope calculation, and it looked roughly fine. £150,000 saved, 7 more years of contributions, retire at 57 on £25,000 a year, sorted. Except it wasn't, because John had made the same mistake almost everyone makes when they plan for early retirement. He forgot about the gap. John wanted to stop working at 57, but the state pension doesn't arrive until 67. That's a full decade, 10 years, where every single pound of income has to come out of his own pocket. No state support, no top-up, just his pot, being drawn down year after year before the cavalry arrives. When we projected it out, the picture got uncomfortable fast. At his current savings rate, John's pot would grow to around £300,000 by 57. Drawing £25,000 a year from that, with no state pension for a decade, the money would run out at 74. John was planning for freedom. The numbers were planning for a crisis. But here's where John's story takes a turn. Because once we actually laid the numbers out properly, he wasn't nearly as far off as that projection suggested. The gap was real, but it was closable. And there were 2 ways to close it. The 2 options: John was paying £250 a month into his pension and £100 a month into an investment ISA. An average 8% annual return, that gets him to roughly £300,000 by 57. To bridge the 10-year gap before state pension and keep the money lasting well into his 90s, he needed to get that pot closer to £385,000. The shortfall? Around £70,000 to £85,000. So we gave John 2 paths forward. Option 1, increase contributions. John ups his monthly pension contributions by £750 on top of what he's already paying. 7 years of compounding does the heavy lifting and his pot lands at £385,000. Full retirement at 57, money lasting well into his 90s, dream intact, and because John is a higher rate taxpayer, the government covers 40% of every pension contribution through tax relief. That £750 a month effectively cost him closer to £450 once the relief lands. Still a meaningful commitment, but far more manageable than the headline figure looked. Option 2, retire as planned, but work lightly. If finding an extra £750 a month isn't realistic, John could still walk away from full-time work at 57. He just picks up something part-time. 2 days a week, something easy, something he doesn't hate, earning around £10,000 a year. That income alone closes the annual shortfall. His existing contributions stay the same. His pot survives the gap intact. 2 days a week, for the lifestyle he'd spent decades building toward. For John, that felt less like a compromise and more like a reasonable trade. And this is the part of the story that hit John hardest. He'd walked in convinced he was behind. That 57 was probably wishful thinking and he'd quietly have to push it back to 60, maybe 62, maybe just accept 67 like everyone else. But the numbers told a different story. At 50, with £150,000 already saved and 7 years still ahead of him, John was closer to his goal than he'd ever let himself believe. He just needed someone to lay it out clearly. Most people in John's position are closer than they think. The problem isn't the plan, it's that nobody's ever properly shown them the numbers. The takeaway. So what does John's story actually teach us? First, the state pension gap is the most underestimated number in early retirement planning. If you want to stop working before 67, you need to know exactly how many years you're funding alone, and build that into your plan from the start. Second, there are always more options than it first appears. More contributions or flexible income in the early years. Both work. Neither is giving up on the dream. Third, the earlier you look at your numbers, the more time you have to make small adjustments instead of big ones. John had 7 years, that was enough, but only because he looked at 50 and not 56. So if you were John, which path would you take? Pay more in now for a clean break at 57, or keep contributions the same and work 2 light days a week while you settle in? Tell me in the comments. I read everyone. If John's story made you think about your own numbers, hit like. It helps budget and build reach more people who need to hear this. And subscribe if you want more honest, straightforward retirement planning without the fluff. See you in the next one.